Hello and welcome to another video. So we're taking a look at the second lot of new cards for this next upcoming expansion, and the first card, as you can see, is the one that Ignidius actually revealed. So I've got the card here in front of me, and it's a pretty okay card, honestly. A 7-drop 0/6 legendary dragon card. He always does reveal those dragon legendaries. He's got Accelerate 3, draw 2 cards, so it's a nice spell draw, which is really good, especially as a 3-drop. I always like the 3-drop draw 2 spell cards, they always do amazingly well, and it adds some nice Lindworm support, and it really just works nicely there, so that's always good. Then we've got the Fanfare, gain plus X plus 0, deal X damage to the enemy follower, X equals the number of non-follower cards you've played this turn. So this is going to be kind of a wide clear as well, not a wide clear, sorry, a big clear. Dealing with pretty big followers, like things like Zeus. Obviously we don't have that, but it will deal with similar enemies quite well, high statted followers, especially in kind of the 7 slot if you are running this in a Lindworm deck, which I can't see any other deck you'd really want this in other than that one. Then we have a Lady Grey Deathweaver, a 2-drop 1/3 silver Shadowcraft card. It has a Drain and Evolve Reanimate 2, so this actually isn't bad either. It gives you basically an extra body for 2, and you can pretty much pick and choose because it is going to be a low cost drop. At the same time, having Drain does give it the ability to heal you a little bit. Although Shadowcraft doesn't usually use cards like this one typically, I would love to see a deck built around reanimating low cost followers using things like Skull Ring and this card to really take advantage of that mechanic. Then we have Soul Conversion. This is a direct reprint of the Soul Conversion we currently have. Of course, the new art looks absolutely awesome. I always love when we see things like this. I loved seeing the Summon Bloodkin one, and now we get Soul Conversion. Your old Soul Conversions will be usable in rotation if they follow the same format they did for the Vania cards, which are nice. So really good overall. This was a great spell, a spell that was pretty much staple in everything. Of course, we are going to need a decent last word follower to target with this. Lurching Corpse was the most popular before, but hopefully we can find something like that in rotation to really use this card on. Then we have Hazen, Priest of the Wind, Havencraft, 2-drop 1/3 bronze. It is a ward, and that is pretty much it. Its Evo, though, does have crazy stats. It goes from being a 1/3 to a 5/4, so the attack stat is gaining 4, and the defense stat is only gaining 1, but at that stage it doesn't have a ward. So this card, if you set it up right on turn 2, or turn 3 most likely if you're going first, you could really have a kind of aggressive deck going. Of course it is ward, which means it does need to be targeted, and I'm sure things like Portal will just absolutely decimate this card, but I definitely would love to see more cards like this that have really nice stat lines. I always like the 1/3 stat line on 2 drops, and the 5/4 stat line for an Evo is actually pretty decent. Then we have Mordecai, Eternal Duelist, Shadowcraft's legendary, 10-drop 7/7. So this obviously being the Mordecai remake, I would say. I don't like calling them reprints, because reprints would be direct, like Soul Conversion. This is definitely more of a remake on an existing character, which is pretty common in card games, of course. Fanfare Necromancy 6, evolve this follower. Evolve this follower if it was summoned using Reanimate, and last word, summon an unevolved Mordecai Eternal Duelist. So it's very similar to Woe, in the fact that Necromancy allows him to be resummoned. The Reanimate, though, does give it some extra legs to stand on, although it is an awkward card. At least it is a decent Reanimate target. After all, we are seeing Zeus rotate out, so rotation does need something to be able to reanimate. I think if we have some better support cards to go along with this one, we could see this card do pretty well. Then we have True Dragon Scathacha. I really butchered that, I'm sure. 5-drop 5/5 gold, Dragoncraft. Fanfare, if Overflow is not active for you, deal 2 damage to this follower and gain an empty play point orb. If Overflow is active for you, give your leader the following effect. Subtract 2 from the next source of damage dealt to your leader. So, subtracting 2 damage is kind of average, but the first effect is actually pretty okay. With Sybil rotating out, we are going to need something to fill that 5 slot that does give us an orb, and this one obviously is not the worst option. It's definitely not good, but I think it at least has some use. I mean, dealing 2 damage to this follower does put it at a 5/3, which is kind of weak, but gaining an empty play point is still okay. So definitely not as good as Sybil, but it could fill that gap unless we find something better to really slot in there. Then we have Silva, Ardent Sniper. So this is Portalcraft's legendary. It's a 7-drop 6/5. This card, a few people are happy about, unhappy about. It's very up in the air at the moment on how this card's effect will exactly work. Without official clarification from Cygames themselves. It's a little hard to say. I'm sure we will get a Q&A sort of thing that we usually get with an expansion that will explain how this works, but its effect is Accelerate 3, so you play it as a 3-drop spell, put a follower that originally cost 3 play points or less from your hand into play, give it Rush, give your leader the following effect: on each of your turns, deal 1 damage to the enemy leader the first time an allied follower attacks. This effect lasts the rest of the match. And then without the Accelerate, it is just an ambush, so it's a 6/5 ambush, which is still pretty okay for Portal. Having an ambush card, it does work in its favour quite nicely. But that Accelerate effect, the main thing to take away from this effect in my opinion is that this will only deal 1 damage to the enemy leader once per turn when you first attack. So if you have 4 followers on board, the first one you attack with will deal 1 damage to the enemy leader. All the other attacks will then do nothing to the enemy leader, and that's how it will roll every single turn. So that's how I believe this card works, and looking at some other translation-y stuff, that seems to appear how it works, but until we have official word, it's not really confirmed either way, at least not any official word I have seen. So I am leaning towards that it is just 1 damage, which means instead of being a really good artifact or puppet support, it is very average. So hopefully guys, well hopefully yeah, if this card ended up with the effect that it's got for 3, it would be absolutely busted, and I just can't see that being the case. If it is, wow, puppets and that are going to be nuts. If not, I think this is a well-balanced card. Then we have Katalina, Sky Guardian, a 6-drop 4/4, neutral. Ward cannot receive more than 3 damage at a time, same as unevolved form for its evolve. So not being able to receive more than 3 damage means it does survive at least 2 attacks, which is why obviously a 6-drop has a 4/4 stat line. But outside of that, there's not much more to say for that card. Even with its evolved stat, it's still only at most surviving probably 2 attacks, honestly. So for a neutral, it's okay, but not the best. But it is Silva, so we got to give it that. Then we have a Rackam, Airship Pilot, a 4-drop 3/3. If you haven't noticed, most of these are from the trailer so far, so we have seen most of the trailer cards now. This is a neutral. Whenever this follower attacks an enemy follower, deal 3 damage to the follower before it can deal any damage in return. So this card kind of goes along with that last card with the whole 3 damage sort of archetype, which is pretty obvious because the artworks do seem to go together nicely. 3 damage to a follower before it can deal any damage in return is okay. It's very similar to what Victoria does, and that's pretty much it for that one. I mean, when it attacks, that gets that damage and you pretty much can kill something before it kills you. Then we have Narmaya, Ephemeral Blade. I'm really bad with these. Anyway, that is a Bloodcraft Gold 4-drop 4/3. 4/3 stat lines, not a biggest fan of. I much prefer the 3/4 stat lines, but it does have Bane, which means it is killing things pretty much immediately. And the evolve, destroy an enemy follower, deal damage to your leader until their defense drops to 10 if vengeance is not active for you. So this is kind of taking the place of Belf, because Belf will be rotating out, which means you do need a vengeance activator, and in the 4th slot this does an okay job. Going first, of course, this is weaker because you don't get that activation. Going second though, it's almost the same because most of the time you're evolving Belf to attack. The only biggest downside is you don't have any draw effect, which means you are lacking drawing blood now, because obviously that was a huge thing to have massive draw power, and now you've lost that with any kind of aggression. Then we have Charlotta, Tiny Justice, a 3-drop 2/3 Swordcraft Commander, so another little commander, which is okay. I don't mind little commanders. It is a ward. Evolve. If the evolve effect is all allied followers cannot be damaged by spells and effects until the end of your opponent's turn. So basically doing the exact same thing that Chromatic Duel does with the Magnus. She does the exact same thing, except hers is just a plate effect, and that is pretty much it. That's not too exciting, but is pretty good. It means they are being able to avoid a lot more board clears, so Sword is getting a much more defensive or more mid-range playstyle overall. We're not seeing as many aggressive cards out of Sword, and much more to the mid to late game. Then we have Sutera of the Sacred 4-drop 4/3 Silva, Forestcraft, Fanfare, draw a card. Whenever this follower attacks, deal 1 damage to all enemy followers is its evolve effect. So having that as an evolve effect is actually pretty okay, especially if it's a mirror match. This would do quite well against Forest. And then the Fanfare, draw a card is actually pretty alright as well. I don't mind that as a Fanfare. And that is almost the end. We haven't got many cards left to look at. I think we've still got a few that were released. So, Black Witch Anna, a 2-drop 2/1 bronze Runecraft card. Last word, deal 1 damage to a random enemy follower. Last word, deal 3 damage to a random enemy follower is the Evo. So, that 3 damage is going to be pretty okay. It's similar to how Happy Pig's effect works, where last word heal is Happy Pig, and this one is kind of the opposite. But in Rune, I don't know how I feel about this card. I feel like if this was in Shadow, it would be a really good card. If it's in Rune, it just feels kind of average, but we'll have to wait and see. Then we have Restless Parish, the 0-drop amulet from Bloodcraft. If you have at least 2 play points, play this card as either Nightfall or Madness Revealed. We'll take a look at those in just a sec. If you don't play it as either of those, you get Countdown 1, Fanfare, deal 1 damage to your leader, last word, draw a card. Then, of course, Nightfall is a 2-drop amulet. Countdown 2 at the end of your turn, summon a Forest Bat, so it's just a Forest Bat summoner. And then Madness Revealed, it's a 2-drop, of course, again. Countdown 1, Fanfare, deal 4 damage to your leader. Last word, restore 8 defense to your leader. So it's an initial 4 damage to get a 4 heal on the last word, which is okay. I actually don't mind the versatility of this card, and the fact that it's Fanfare, deal 1 damage to your leader, and last word, draw a card for 0 is actually really good, and I actually really like that one. Then we have Pyrewyrm Commander, a 4-drop gold, 3/3 Dragoncraft card. Fanfare, put a Blazing Breath in your hand. Evo, put a Lightning Blast into your hand. So this gives you a couple of removals, which is nice, and allows you to at least get a nice body off them. So imagine if Lightning Blast still cleared your entire board, this card would be broken, but this card right now is, I think, pretty good. It's going to do well against any kind of reanimate deck because Lightning Blast will be able to remove things pretty reasonably, especially if they are resummonable stuff, so that isn't bad at all. Although it is a weaker stat line and I think it may be a little clunky, it's definitely an okay card. I'm not going to hype it up as like an insane card, I just think it's okay for what it is. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. We will be covering in the next set of cards. I try to do them in 10 to 12 lots, so hopefully we can get them like that. But if you did enjoy this video, hit that like button and subscribe. If you guys want to wait and see all the cards at once, I will be doing a full overview at the end. Just before the expansion launches, I will be covering every single card. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that. And I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.